Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be giving you your full review for the Tu-1, the Rank 4 Premium Pack Strike Fighter for the Russian Air Tech Tree. I'll go over its stats, strengths, and weaknesses, give some info about what roles suit it best, and then give my final recommendation on if you should purchase this pack or not. I'll be talking a bit fast so that you can get as much info as possible, as quickly as possible, and I have a lot to say about this plane, so you're going to be thanking me for my brevity later. That said, let's get into the video. So to start, I'll place its stats here on the side of the screen, and you'll notice that its top speed is near 700 kilometers per hour, and while that may be true, you will never ever reach it. Rather, you'll basically need to be at an altitude that you'll likely never reach before dying due to its poor rate of climb, or you'll need to be in a dive. But I digress. I'll get into my opinion about this wonderful aircraft more in just a moment. Aside from this, the Tu-1 pack costs $35 USD and comes with 7 days of premium time and 1000 GE. And now for its roles, it's basically designed 2 or 3 things depending on what you consider to be a role. These things are destroying bases, which it can do actually quite well, playing as close air support / hunting for ships, which it can do under the right circumstances, or intercepting bombers that are flying at tree level. Now by intercepting, I more so mean that you'll find the occasional German pilot that's obviously very confused and for some reason decided to drop to tree level, and you'll just so happen to hit him when your paths cross. Truth is, you really can't intercept anything outside of planes of a much lower BR. The Tu-1 is so slow even without ordnance that Japanese planes, of which pretty much all have a lower top speed than the Tu-1, will catch you like you're riding a bicycle on the Autobahn. The Tu-1's massively powerful 45mm cannons, along with the smaller and better suited for aircraft killing 23mm cannons, can be potent when killing enemy tanks, but only if you reach the battlefield. More often than not, in my experience, you'll either be killed before either reaching the battlefield or you'll die shortly after getting there. Few matches have seen much success for me in a close air support role, and while it can theoretically be devastating against ground, being that it can carry 3 1000 kilogram bombs, and I'll get into those in a moment, you'll be facing enemy planes like the FW-190D9, the BF-109G series, and even P-47s that can easily destroy you. Now, the defensive armament on the Tu-1 is good, but you'll basically have to be sitting evenly with the enemy plane in order for you to actually do damage to them. Now, additionally, you can also go for naval targets, and this is one of the surprisingly interesting and cool features about this plane, but the torpedoes on it are not great and will require you to fly at less than 300 kilometers per hour to drop them successfully in Naval RB. Naval AB does allow you to drop them at somewhat higher speeds, but they still require you to drop to slow speeds and low altitudes at a BR where basically every ship, especially heavy cruisers, have insane anti-aircraft armament. Flying the Tu-1 down for a torpedo attack against a large ship will nearly always get you killed, and due to mediocre torpedoes, you likely will not get a kill unless you hit an ammo rack, you attack a smaller ship, or you space your torpedoes out so that you hit the ship in numerous areas. Despite this being fairly difficult, you're better off staying with the 1000 kilogram bombs for naval, in my opinion. And finally, when it comes to defensive maneuvering, this plane has none of it, so forget about even trying to turn in on any sort of fighter attacking you. You will not be able to do it. You're better just getting into your defensive armament and trying to take out your enemies when they line up behind you. And now for its strengths and weaknesses, I'll start off with its strengths. It has an extremely powerful offensive armament. The 45mm cannons are one-shot kills against pretty much every plane in-game, and the 23mm cannons will also sometimes one-hit planes, and if not, they'll crit them. The larger cannons are also potent against ground targets with over 60mm of armor pen. However, it will cost additional spawn points, typically around 100 extra spawn points to get the armor shells, whereas default shells are basically half and half armor and high explosive. Second, it has a very heavy ordnance load. It can carry up to 3 quote-unquote 1000 kilogram bombs. Now, these are not really 1000 kilogram bombs, but I'll get into that in my final recommendation. It can also carry torpedoes, 6 250 kilogram bombs, or 3 500 kilogram bombs. The largest of these will give you tons of RP and silver lines on successful base attacks and are also quite effective for CAS if, again, you can reach the battlefield. Third, it has radar, which is pretty interesting but not really necessary at this BR. Fourth, it has a strong airframe, which will be good because you will be a huge bullet sponge. Additionally, to go along with this, the Tu-1 actually has quite a bit of armor, which is unusual for most planes. Now, in some spots, you even have over 60mm of bulletproof glass, and quite a few areas with 12mm of steel plating. On top of this, you have defensive armament that is somewhat useful. While being somewhat weak, you are slow enough where enemies will be close, meaning that you will not miss many shots again if they line up behind you. This is especially useful against Japanese fighters, as you will face a ton of them. As of yet, most of them do not know that the Tu-1 has defensive gunners, so you can set them all on fire very easily and take them down with you if, again, they set upon you. And finally, it's excellent for grinding. Due to its bomb load and strong armament, if you take out a base and get some kills, you will find find yourself easily grinding the Russian air tech tree. For me, I unlocked 2 mid-BR planes in only about 6 matches. In this way, not only does it have strong premium RP bonuses, but it also has good premium SL bonuses as well. And now for its weaknesses, as poor speed. Though it's listed as having near a 700 km/h top speed, which is respectable for nearly any prop plane, you will likely top out around 450 km/h, especially when carrying ordnance. It is so slow in fact that you will oftentimes not reach your target before it's destroyed by people on your team that do not respect dibs. Because so many other planes exist at this BR that are faster, including even the AM1, I almost feel that the Tu-1 should be a lower BR in air RB. In ground RB, however, speed doesn't matter as much, but it still does matter, and you will find yourself being poached very often, sometimes right when you spawn. Secondly, despite having heavy armament, you will rarely be able to get the drop on anyone, making it useless in almost all engagements outside of the occasional head-on. Head-ons are at least somewhat doable due to the heavy bulletproof glass protecting the pilot. Third, it has a poor rate of climb and agility. Flying the Tu-1 feels like gravity is 2 times higher and that you're tethered to the ground. Even without ordnance, you will still fly like a brick. For the fourth weakness, the 45mm cannons jam extremely quickly. And fifth, funny enough, the reason why you will not get many base kills by yourself, if you get any, is because they are not truly 1000 kg bombs that this can carry. Rather, they are an 890 kg bombs, and if they were real 1000 kg bombs, you'd have plenty of firepower to take out a base by yourself, but you are being shorted by over 10% of ordnance load. And now for my final recommendation, and I have a lot to say about this plane, so you can easily tell that Gaijin is really pushing for Naval even more than it did even just a few months ago, largely due to the fact that this plane can use torpedoes, which is not exactly common for premium planes, at least not as of yet, and there are apparently a lot of regular tech tree planes that can use torpedoes in the Russian tech tree, so it really stands as no coincidence that this is 5.7, which is currently near the top BR for Naval, and it can use torpedoes. Now the torpedoes are not great, but they're serviceable, especially in Naval RB. Oddly enough, I never thought I'd say this, but the Tu-1 is one of the better premium planes to exist for Naval, around 5.7 BR, if you can get past defensive fire from enemy cruisers. The cannons actually do quite a bit of damage to ships, but that's kind of a secondary thing. Now the problem is that along with every other game mode, the Tu-1 feels like a sitting duck, so that while you do have a strong airframe that can take hits and will likely allow you to do at least something in a match, such as bomb a target or score a defensive kill, you will rarely survive a match, whereas other multi-engine premiums such as the Ju-388C, the Hornet Mark I, Do-335B2, or even the French single-engine heavy fighter, the Naval, will be much more likely to survive because they are either faster, more maneuverable, or both, all while being extremely capable of doing very well in a match. That said, the best comparison I feel between the planes I just mentioned would be the Do-335B2 with the Tu-1. They are both currently at 5.7 BR, although I do see the Tu-1 dropping a little bit, though that remains to be seen. The Do-335B2 has better cannons for destroying tanks as they pen through a maximum of 95mm of armor compared to the Tu-1's 63mm. It's also more maneuverable, flies much faster, is more versatile, and has more ammunition. The only thing that the Do-335B2 does worse than the Tu-1 is carry ordnance, and even still the 335 carries up to 1000 kilograms of bombs, which is still extremely potent, especially around this BR. The thing is that the Tu-1 really only carries around 2670 kilograms of ordnance at max, being that the 1000 kilogram bombs only weigh about 890 kilograms each, as I mentioned before, which is 2.67 times what the 335 can carry, but the total explosive yield of the Tu-1 is only 1189 kilograms of force compared to the 335's 510 kilograms, meaning that the Tu-1 really only has around 2.3 times the explosive yield that the 335 has, all while seeming like it has 3 times as much explosive yield, and while being a substantially worse performing aircraft that is much less likely to survive a match. In every situation outside of possibly base bombing, I would take the 335, and even still that's a tough choice because I know that I would have a much better time doing well after the bombs drop with the 335B2 than I would with the Tu-1. If you want a better look at what I mean, check out my gameplay for the Do-335B2 linked in the description below. Now, in theory and in uncontested skies, the Tu-1 is a good plane, as the payload, the armament, and the top speed. The problem is that once you have to start attaching conditions by which a vehicle can only be successful, then it's not good. And the more conditions that you have to add, the worse it ends up being. There are numerous planes I can think of that I would recommend before I recommend the Tu-1. Before I give you this short list, bear in mind that the Tu-1 is still a good grinder and is still a good option for grinding the Russian air tech tree if you don't mind being frustrated often. Sometimes you can get yourself a ton of RP per match because it really has that home run bat potential. That said, I'd recommend in no particular order the DO335B2, JU388C, the Naval for the French, the Italian BF109G2, the G55S, the British Hornet Mark I, or even the KI-87 for Japan. Now, I won't even get into too much more because I know I could go on for at least another 10 minutes regarding the Tu-1, and I'm speaking very quickly, which tells you how much I have to say about this plane. Now, do I think that the Tu-1 is a bad plane? By no means. It can be extremely fun and rewarding and will be a great grinding tool for whoever picks it. The problem is that I found that no matter how good it is still ridiculously slow, and that speed issue basically makes the Tu-1's best qualities null and void. Like I said, I'd pick up the DO335B2 any day of the week over the Tu-1 because it basically does everything that the Tu-1 is meant to do, but the 335 does it better and actually can accomplish those things. The only thing that the Tu-1 actually does that has a fairly unique thing among premiums around this BR is the fact that it has an insanely powerful primary armament and can carry 3 quote-unquote 1,000 kilogram bombs. If you can make it to your target before either your target is destroyed or before you are destroyed, then you will get a ton of RP and you will find this plane to be extremely useful and good. But as I stated before, the more ifs that you attach to a vehicle's success, the worse off the vehicle tends to be. In theory, I'd say to buy this plane, but the stats are deceiving, and in practice, I'd say to avoid the Tu-1 unless you want an occasionally good strike fighter that will fairly reliably earn you RP, at least an air RB. Otherwise, if you're just looking for a plane of any nation around this BR that would be built to do the same thing, the DO335B2 is the way to go. It's a superior dogfighter, close air support plane, interceptor, and to a point, can be a superior base attacker. But that all said, thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like more content or if you like this content. But either way, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.